Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Hope the week's going well. Let me start with some macro thoughts which caught my attention. Look at this 1 month chart of the Philippine stock market. A lot of anxiety pre-election. And then the expected happened and reversed the entire downdraft. It shows you how political risk can play out. Investors paying more to lend Germany money. Bund sold 3.954 billion euros, June 2018 maturity, so 2-year shats at minus 0.51%, second lowest yield in history. That confirms the dislocation, the new normal that we're existing in. And Zero H says, what is the DVO1 on 100-year paper? It's off the charts. And then I like this from Sid Verma. I have no idea what's happening in the so-called Islamic State, and I wish it had benchmark size on-the-run bonds so I could track sentiment. Own thoughts. Many years ago, we saw an advertisement for a golden retriever in the window of a coffee shop in Ratna Square in Yali, Mombasa. Talking about 9-10 years ago. We went to the house and there was one dog left. And she kept following us about, and we all said she wants to be part of our family. My family, of course, has a wife and 3 daughters, so we were taking on a 4th. And Sahara came to Nairobi with us and was with us ever since. Beautifully, incredibly intelligent and sensitive dog. She gave birth to 3 sets of puppies, and the last set was just under a year ago. We kept 3 of the pups. There was Bruno, like his father, very big and handsome and extremely charming, and a habit of fluttering his eyelashes. Then there was Caesar, somewhere in between, and Dewey, who was called Dewey because Hannah said he always looked a bit sad and mopey. Occasionally, the dogs would all run out of the gate and disappear in the coffee fields. We lived on the outskirts of Nairobi, in what were originally coffee fields. And then they'd come back, not too much later, about an hour or so. And 2 days ago, Nisha tells me Sahara and Bruno have disappeared. And coincidentally, a couple of days ago, our gardener left as well, because Nisha had asked for his police abstract, and he wasn't able to provide one. Of course, got on very well with the dogs. And I said to Nisha, he won their trust. He has taken off with them. It's really quite sad. We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness, said George Orwell in 1984. Power is in tearing human minds to pieces, putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. The object of terrorism is terrorism. The object of oppression is oppression. The object of torture is torture. The object of murder is murder. The object of power is power. Now do you begin to understand me? And then, the poets Was and Shire, who came to fame through Beyonce, but obviously is deserving of her own fame, going by the poetry she's writing, writes primarily about the immigrant experience, but also tweets about reality television. The surrealism of everyday immigrant life. One day you're in your own country having fun, drinking mango juice, and the next day you're in the underground in London and your children are speaking to you in a language you don't understand. She opens the book her first with, I have my mother's mouth and my father's eyes. On my face they are still together. It's East African storytelling and coming-of-age memoir fused into one. It's a first-generation woman, always looking backward and forward at the same time, acknowledging that to move through life without being haunted by the past lives of your forebears is impossible. This is a picture of Zarak, which is a horse, as it ran a couple of days ago. I think it has an illustrious career ahead of it. Political reflections. Chad President Idris Deby has arrived in Uganda to attend President Museveni's swearing-in ceremony. On the eve of President Museveni being sworn in, the Ugandan opposition party swore in Kizza Besigye as president as well. President Bashir has also arrived in Uganda for the swearing-in of President Museveni. So interesting developments there. Social media shut off. Look at this timeline of Trump's Twitter history from Politico magazine. He has been phenomenal at earning share of voice. And then an article which gives the other side of the story about President Obama. It says, "Thank you, Barack Obama, for showing us that peace is war." By contrast, Obama is continually compared to Martin Luther King Jr. Much of the world, especially among Africans, he is admired to the point of being worshipped. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in his first year in office, despite the fact that he had enlarged the war in Iraq and extended it in Afghanistan. Now he has brought total war to Syria, where at least 250,000 people have perished. He has orchestrated the subversion of Venezuela. This is what I used to talk about, very sophisticated hybrid warfare, cyber warfare, oil warfare. A country that freely gave aid to many Latin America's most impoverished people. He has encouraged neoliberal politicians to overthrow Brazil's president, supervised a right-wing coup in the Honduras, supported a neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine, helped to overthrow the government of Libya, and created a failed state there, paid Kenya and Ethiopia to attack Somalia, supplied bombs to Saudi Arabia to use on Yemenis, and built up offensive US weapons on Russia's borders. In Asia, his pivot has reasserted Japan's importance. He's got South Korea to draw closer to Japan and threatens China with drive-by aircraft carriers and provocative flyovers. One way of putting it, and that's why I said that when it comes to sort of advancing the US national interest, I mean, he's no slouch, is he? Just a little bit more sophisticated. Currency markets, euro, let's take a look at where we are here. The euro's 114.07, pushing on above 114. Dollar index 93.94. Japanese yen 108.87. Swissy 0.9720. The pound 144.24. The Aussie, which is obviously facing an election in the not too distant future, 0.7327. India rupee 66.605. South Korean won 1166.25. The real has been strengthening of late. I'll come to that in a moment. 344.77. Egyptian pound 8.88. And the rand 15.1437. Have a look at this 3-month chart of the dollar index. That area I spoke about previously, which is 93, which was violated, but we came back above it, is very key in my opinion from a chart point of view. I'm with Goldman Sachs, who retained a bullish outlook on the dollar, and I think the bull trend remains intact. Interesting tweet from Holger. Greece's yields drop like a stone as ECB said to consider putting new Greek waiver on agenda. Essentially, the markets are now thinking that it's more likely we're going to see some kind of haircut. Gold, where are we? 1271.95. We seem to be consolidating below 1300. I think you buy dips. I think we'll go above 1300 now. Oil prices jump, and how? Remember that golden cross formation David Inglis was talking about? US crude stockpiles fall for first time since March. US crude oil is just at $47. Brent looks as if it wants to try and test 50. I'm short from Monday at 46.20 and a bit offside at the moment. Emerging markets, Dilma Rousseff, I'll put up a photograph she posted on February the 13th, and the Brazilian real is firming on the basis that Dilma Rousseff is about to be terminated. Put up an image that Holger posted of the real, and you can see how it's been strengthening, and also an image of the Turkish lira, which has depreciated to 2.96 versus the dollar, having lost 5.7% in May. This is in part, I think, because of the Davutoglu departure, increasing uncertainty, a widening current account deficit, and a slowing economy. Aidan Mohammed, we can note, quoting the president, at this West Africa summit, we can no longer depend on international markets. Our future resides in increasing intra-African trade. President Kenyatta, African governments must tear down barriers to intra-regional trade, he said. Lipton of the IMF, who was here, and he did a press conference which we filmed and published. Export and budget revenues have gone down. Countries must adjust and avoid vulnerability to future shocks. Binyamimia, who's the lady with Oxfam, says IMF are wazungu. The IMF are white people and need to put things politely. African governments have not spent their commodities wealth well. That's without doubt. DRC, plenty going on over there. Look at this video I found. Le peuple congolais mène sa lutte pour la démocratie à côté de Moïse Katumbi. And gives you an idea of the response that the state is deploying. I think he is possibly a formidable opponent. Congo police fired tear gas at supporters of the opposition leader on Wednesday, as thousands of supporters of a leading opposition candidate for president, who is being questioned over government allegations of hiring mercenaries. And have a look at this video as well. Après les jets de billets de policiers sur les partisans, gaz et balles, répression dictatoriale. Then the Deutsche Welle spoke with Jason Stearns, who believes that the allegations against Katumbi of having mercenaries are far-fetched, but that this could be a message to Katumbi that he should watch out. He describes Katumbi as a populist person. He is somebody known to spread money around, to seduce people. This has given him very broad popularity. But he also said he's not well known in the west of the Kandasa, and he alleges that he doesn't speak very good Lingala. But the fact of the matter is, neither does President Kabila. He has yet to announce clearly his plans, but contrary to the constitution, which allows only a two-term limit, some of his party members have asked him to run again. Those proposals are finding fierce resistance. President Kabila has been in power for 15 years, has shown no signs of preparing to leave office, despite him calling for a national dialogue to allow for a peaceful vote. Opponents viewed the demands as a trap which could allow his supporters to put off polls for 2 to 4 years until they can organize credible elections. Then we learned late afternoon that Congo High Court says Kabila can stay in power if polls are not held. That's an interesting way of prolonging his term. And this morning I was listening to BBC World Service talking about this very matter. I said Kabila has a cunning plan, which we've just seen with the court decision. But can he keep the street under control? Go and have a look at those videos I put up there and see how edgy the street is. And I go back to Paul Virilio, who said the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and itself becomes a motor, a machine of attack. In other words, a producer of speed. As we look around the world today, we can see a battle for the street, from the streets of Bujumbura to the streets of Baltimore. In November last year, I wrote about Ouagadougou's signal to sub-Saharan Africa and concluded that we need to ask ourselves, how many people can an incumbent shoot stone cold dead in such a situation? 100,000, 10,000? This is another point. There is a threshold beyond which the incumbent cannot go. Where that threshold lies will be discovered in the throes of the event. Therefore, the preeminent point to note is that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. Moïse Katumbi, let me put up a photograph of him as he approaches Lubumbashi court. This is a photograph that David Mills of The Economist posted. He's been traveling there. South African all share up 2.83% this year. Dollar rand 15.1399. Let's see how things pan out from here. We've been in this very wide range. We've got nearly down to 14 the figure, close to 18. We're closer to 14. We could see a Dilma Rousseff like rally, but I think um, Jacob Zuma is far harder to prize out of position than Dilma Rousseff. Nigeria's reliance on Chinese cash to rescue its currency gets short shrift. Strategists are criticizing Nigeria's latest plan to rescue its currency, this time by relying on Chinese cash. On a visit to Beijing last month, President Buhari signed a currency agreement aimed at encouraging trade with China and reducing Nigeria's demand for dollars to relieve pressure on its dwindling foreign reserves. Naira-yuan swap agreement is very unlikely to relieve pressure on the Naira or Nigeria's reserves. The market wants to see a clear path toward achieving a sustainable exchange rate where supply and demand for foreign exchange are balanced. Nigeria has held the Naira at 197 to 199 to the dollar since March last year. Reserves have fallen 29% since mid-2014 to the lowest in more than 10 years. The level of devaluation implied by Naira forward contracts has dropped as Mr. Buhari resists calls to let the currency weaken. They still predict a 37% decline in the next year. Recent rebound in oil prices has not helped because they're producing the least oil for the last 20 years, in point of fact. Beijing, of course, has signed several bilateral currency swaps in the past 8 years, including with South Korea, Malaysia, and Argentina. SA, South Africa, got a $4.6 billion 3-year swap line in April 2015. Nigeria runs a persistent trade deficit with China. Unless China is willing to take more Naira than it needs to buy Nigerian crude, which it doesn't tend to do in big quantities, then Nigeria's deficit foreign exchange, whether yuan or dollars, is likely to continue. Investors are shunning Nigerian stocks and bonds until there is a devaluation. Equities have dropped 10% this year, the most in Africa after Zambia's. I think China will need to pony up a lot more. Carlo, who I had dinner with when he was visiting, he was conducting some corporate governance seminars in Nairobi, saw Nigeria through a geopolitical lens, and was convinced that China saw it as a strategic necessity to pick up Nigeria, make the monies available, and then show Africa, look, this is what we can do. This seems to be President Buhari's calculation. I, however, believe it's not going to be sufficient to bail out the Naira policy, and therefore risks of a disorderly disruption via the FX markets remain very elevated. I tweeted Bola Julian Keane this morning saying, is China bailout sufficient to bail out Nigeria? And I said, no. Now the Vice President is saying Nigeria should mull devaluation and FX policy review. But I think essentially the problem there is that folks are very nervous to go head-to-head with President Buhari, who said, I'm not going to demand any apology from anybody. What I'm demanding is the return of assets. He's in Nairobi, in London. What would I do with an apology? I need something tangible, he said, rubbing his fingers together in a gesture commonly used to refer to money. The audience laughed. Of course, this refers to the fact that David Cameron called Nigeria fantastically corrupt, and its president agrees. He's an outlier on anti-corruption, but seriously suboptimal Naira policy, in my view. Nigeria is lifting pump prices by 67% amid fuel shortage. Former President Goodluck Jonathan tried to end subsidies 4 years ago. The price of a litre of petrol doubled overnight and caused a nationwide strike that forced Mr. Jonathan to reverse course. This step, of course, will be seen as positive by investors, but the issue is, how will the street react? I think for now, President Buhari is going to have to bank some of his credits and go for it. Nigerian all share down 10.51% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 10.67% this year. Mozambique's consumer inflation quickened to 17.29% year-on-year in April from 13.61% in March. The Statistics Office said on Wednesday. That's a spike right there. That shows you how far away from that moment 714 days ago when the IMF held that conference in Maputo called Africa Rising. CNN has reported that Pizza Hut just delivered a pie to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. Well done, Pizza Hut. If you haven't seen the press conference that David Lipton and the Cabinet Secretary for the Treasury, Henry Rotich, held a couple of days ago at the Serena, please have a look. We have the link up. It's on rich.co.ke and on Rich Wrap Up. Safaricom banks strong growth as mobiles become tool of life. John Aguiombe in the FT. Bob Collymore said falling device prices and cheaper services meant cell phones were now a tool, not a luxury. The number of smartphones in Kenya rose 128% in 2015 to 7.8 million. The mobile phone is ubiquitous, said Collymore. People are relying on it for their productivity. Revenue from Safaricom's M-Pesa mobile platform increased 27.2%. Mobile data up 42.7%. Total value of M-Pesa transactions rose 27% to 5.27 trillion shillings. I said the results showed the democratization of data in Kenya is no longer the preserve of the elite. However, they tilted, as I said yesterday, the EBITDA projection for full year 27 lower into a range of about 7 point something, 10 point something. Collymore was quoted as saying growth has to plateau at some point. We cannot see exponential growth forever. However, Eric Musa, analyst, said that Safaricom often gives a soft outlook at the start of its financial year and then revises up its forecasts. Those were strong results, plain and simple. There's a link for the full year results if you want to have a look. And a couple of quotes from yesterday. We are issuing one loan every second via Mshwari and KCB Group, said Bob, which is what Joshua calls algorithmic banking. Safaricom, we've started to leverage big data, 14.1 million mobile data users. Mobile usage was up 112%. Nairobi All Share up 0.35% this year. NSE 20 down 2.63% so far this year. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful.